had a chance to write down your questions. I'm going to collect this now so I can put this together. If you are taking that, you can collect this. And that way I can. Just one, that's it. That's amazing. All there. I'm going to be long, okay?
We know everything.
That's all over emails we have time. You can pass them up to me when, or as you finish getting this together. Thank you for taking this opportunity. I had invited Bishop Sisk to do a dialogue sermon, which is what we normally do on Sunday, and he thought that maybe the most productive use of time today would be to have a question and answer afterwards. So thank you for taking this opportunity. I'll start out with the first one that I think will set the mood. How does it feel to be in the hot seat most of the time? Warm. Can we quote you on it?
It's actually, I must say, I thoroughly enjoy what I do, and the opportunity that it really affords me to sort of hear different perspectives and to try to sort of respond to those perspectives. I find it exciting, actually. And we get at a moment like this, you sort of stand up and you talk to people and try to think, what is it that I can say that will respond to what they have asked in the light of the other things that I knew. So it's a hot seat, but it's better than having a cold seat.
This person wants to know, if one changes religions in life, will it be held against you after death?
I have yet to know entirely what God thinks about everything. The truth is that I think all people are attempting to respond to the sense of God's call to them, and that happens through history, it happens through space, and it happens through the course of one's individual life. So, I think we need to be a bit easy on ourselves about some of these questions that we address and worry about. I remember one day hearing the Bishop of Durham. I was stopping by briefly at a place that had a conference, and he was addressing the English clergy, and he was addressing them. He was talking to them about the Trinity, and he said to this group of, in those days, all clergy men, and they got talking about heaven, what heaven would be like, and who could, this same kind of question, who could get in, who couldn't get in, and all that sort of thing. And he said, gentlemen, let me simply tell you that heaven will not be you and your three favorite parishioners. I really think that that's profoundly true. We are not the ones that will be calling the shots on that, frankly. We might wish to call the shots on that, but we are not the ones that call the shots on that. And I think that this life is a time of preparing ourselves for the remarkable diversity of God's love, which I think we will confront fully in the life to come.
Will the Bishop kindly comment on concrete ways that the Church will make known its opposition to the war in Iraq?
Well, first let me just say the obvious about this is that I would say that there are vast numbers of church people who oppose the war in Iraq. One of the things I think that is true about the Episcopal Church as over against, for example, the Roman Catholic Church. I mean, the Roman Catholic, for better or for worse, the Roman Catholic Church, the church can have a position because the Pope says they've got a position. And that is the church's position. Period. If you don't like it, well, that's your problem for you. Now, the Episcopal Church has tended not to, it does not do that. There is almost nothing about which the church takes, some sort of, uniform stance. Because the fact is that on great many things about which you might have a very powerful feeling, there are people of good faith and good convictions who have different perspectives. Having said that, I think that there are lots of ways that church folks and church organizations within the church do express their considerable concern about dimensions of the war in Iraq. And I think people do that both individually and corporately. They do it through various. I'm sure that, for example, our convention will have some resolution that talks about conflict in Iraq, as do conventions around the National Church General Convention. Those are all simply statements, and that expresses a prevalent view in the life of the church. But it's, I don't think it's accurate to claim that the Episcopal Church has a view on virtually anything. That's not the nature of the way we're put together. We can all cast our vote.
Yes.
Perhaps the most powerful way to express the view.
When the great teacher returns, what form do you think that teacher will take? Could that teacher come in a female body or a gay body? What possibilities do you personally envision or entertain?
I have no doubt that the time will come when I will go and meet that leader. I think that we have a lot of speculations about sort of, a second return, and I frankly think that for the most part those are allegorical ways about talking about the fact that creation is a purpose to it. And so I frankly have not spent much time at all thinking about how, whether Jesus is going to come back in some form. To me, that is very far from where I think the gospel is all about. I mean, it's up to God. I mean, God can do whatever God wants about these things. He can come back in whatever form God wants. But I actually don't think or worry about it. I think or worry about what I'm trying to do with my life in this time.
What is your hope and vision as we install our new presiding bishop in Washington, D.C. this coming week? And what can gay, lesbian, transgender people look forward to in the Episcopal Church USA, do you believe?
Well, I think in terms of her, that answer to that, what will be the response of her beginning her time as the presiding bishop? I think there are lots of levels to that particular question. In terms of what I think she wants to do, and as I understand it, is that, and I think the hope of those that, most of those that are elected would like, is that she represents a thoughtful, very, very, very intelligent voice that has a broad and inclusive perspective on the life of both the church and the larger world. And I think that those of us that elected her, hope that is the kind of leader she will be. She has talked as one of the highest priorities of her work, the implementation of the Millennium Development Goals, which come out of her own and our own grounding in Christ. So I think that on one level there is this whole very constructive expectation that we have, the hope that we have. I think on the other there is a real possibility that the result of that will be certain kinds of divisions and alienation. I think that there are those that are in our communion that are delighted at her election precisely because they think it will cause a problem. And that is frankly, I'm sad to say, that's not simply a rumor that I pass on to you, but I think that I have reason, I have strong evidence that is in fact what some people who elected her are hoping will happen. So I think there are sort of two different streams of it. I think that what will clearly her own background will indicate a strong support for the role of gay and lesbian people in the life of the church, and that's really very much part of her life in the diocese that she has served. My own expectation is that the role of gay and lesbian people in the life of our church will continue, I think, along the stream that it has been for some considerable time. I don't know how widely the perspectives that are sort of embraced and followed in a diocese like this or with other dioceses will spread. I think that some of the dioceses that I'm familiar with that are substantially more conservative, as I get it from their bishop, I'm always getting it from that perspective. I'm not there, I'm sort of talking to their bishops. That they feel that the most problematic fallout, if you will, of the confirmation of Gene Robinson that has taken place, that has worked its way out of the system. So we'll see. One of the things that I just learned this past week, that the diocese of Texas, Bishop Sisk diocese. It's one of the Texas dioceses. How many is West? One of the Texas dioceses where the very large church in Plano. I don't know if you're all aware of this, but there's a very large church in Plano, Texas, that wanted to leave the diocese, and then I gather there was another very large church in the diocese that wanted to leave the diocese, and there was some question about whether or not the diocese would try to leave the Episcopal Church. I was in some conversations with Bishop Stanton, and I personally don't believe that he did want to pull the diocese out of the Episcopal Church, but he did want to have it separated in some way, and have some kind of insulation of this. And what happened is that when these two really quite large parishes left, there was the most conservative support that he had, therefore, and therefore he had to deal more completely with the moderate, maybe the conservatives who were more moderate, who didn't want to leave. And all of a sudden, that diocese, which had on their diocesan convention agenda just this past week, some very, very strident resolutions that he was for taking, for example, the name of the Episcopal Church out of their constituting documents. That didn't even come forward for a vote. It didn't even come forward for a vote. So I think what we'll see, I guess is what we'll see in the next couple of years, is a slight moderating. I would say a slight moderating in the most conservative areas of the Episcopal Church. One of the things that I've been doing spending a great deal of time working on, is trying to be supportive of and connecting to other parts of the Anglican Union that don't agree with these most conservative folks. I just came back from a week in Recife, which is in Brazil, the Diocese of Brazil, and the Church of Brazil. And the Diocese of Recife lost 7/8 of its membership, and 2/3 of its parishes and clergy over, not just over Bishop Robinson's consecration, but in the line. And but the Diocese of Brazil itself has been very supportive of the Episcopal Church. It doesn't agree with this, but it's been supportive of us. And so I went there to try to sort of build that kind of sense of being in collegiality with each other. If anybody, I'll put up a little bit of a commercial here, if there was any interest in this parish, for example, developing some money to support the Church of Brazil, I can tell you, one of the things I'm going to do is try to raise some money to help support, because the Diocese of Recife now have no buildings, no paid clergy at all. The previous guy just took it all, and therefore are desperate for finances. So I'm going to try to raise some money to help them. So, at any rate, that's
Could you please explain why the National Convention believes, and why you might specifically believe, that unity seems to be more important than basic human rights when it comes to, for instance, LGBT civil rights?
Well, I don't think that the convention necessarily believes that. I think that's putting things in kind of an equivalency that I don't think that they were intended to have. I think that the notion behind a lot of the thinking at the General Convention was to find a way to continue having some conversations. But, and I think that that was the first, in a sense, that's the first time the General Convention has been asked, their opinion about the importance of unity. We have been, as a church, sort of in the throes of addressing these issues for some time. But that's the first General Convention that has had to specifically asked to do that. And I think what the General Convention said is, okay, we're prepared to talk for a long while. Sure, we're prepared to do that. I don't think that they were trying to say, well, they have sort of two choices. It's unity here, or it's sort of destruction of rights here. I don't think the convention saw itself as doing anything like that, nor did I.
There are about 5 people who wanted to have you comment on where you see the church heading in relation to full acceptance of LGBT people.
Well, I think that it is. I think it is continuing to move in a direction of acceptance. I think there's going to be. I think that acceptance expresses itself in a number of different ways. Let me just sort of give an illustration that in the past, for example, the Diocese of Connecticut was recently in the newspaper, and what they had in the past were prohibitive statements in their organizing documents. That for example, gay and lesbian people could not do a series of different things. Certain kinds of services could not be held. And what they did was simply remove the negatives. For example, in this diocese, it has been for many years. It has been a diocesan policy that a person's sexual orientation is not relevant to their acceptance in the ordination process. Now, how they live out their life is very relevant, but their specific orientation is not relevant. There's in our national canons have suggested that this is the kind of the direction to go. So I think that what you'll see is not so much, and that's the good part, is the nature of canons, sort of affirmative canons. I think what you'll see is the reduction and the elimination of the negative canons, or negative policy interpretation of those canons. I think that's where you're going to see an issue. I think personally that one of the things that I think was sort of discovered in our canons, and people haven't really paid much attention to, is the specific canon that I don't remember which one it is, that defines marriage as between man and woman. That's in our canon. Well, that I think is going to be a real problem, because I think what that means is that's going to take a sort of a positive step, a positive action, rather than simply interpreted in terms of the way our lives are carried out. So my guess is it's going to be a while before they change that canon. I think in terms of the way we live out our lives, that I think is going to become increasingly more encompassing and embracing. That's one of the things that's in our resolutions that actually got us into a substantial amount in terms of the community, because it was what those resolutions did is that they recognized. The resolution recognized that within parishes there's a pastoral response to gay and lesbian folks who wish to be in committed relationships. It didn't authorize it, but it recognized it. Well, to recognize something being within the compass of community, I think a lot of people are quite comfortable with that, are happy with that. Now, the most conservative folks aren't. I mean, they don't like it that we say that that's part of who we are. But I think it's a descriptive. I personally believe that these descriptive realities ultimately give rise to what I think eventually will become sort of canonically recognized. I'm convinced, personally, that the whole issue, for example, of the blessing of same-sex union will come organically out of the life of the church, out of the experience of the community in the community. I personally believe that it will come out because I think personally that it is true that God does work through folks that have relationships, that they're enriched as they seek to live as Christian people, and that this is within the framework of God's will. Now, that's not a perspective that is by any means universal, or necessarily terribly widely shared. It may be shared widely in this parish, but I can assure you it is not shared widely in the community. But I think it has traction. I think it has real traction. I think when these things become a matter of controversy, then people get really focused on them. And I think when you sort of step back and you go to very many places where you would not imagine that this would have any sense of traction. You discover, in fact, when the limelight, when the spotlight is off, people are much more comfortable with it than often it is imagined. So I personally have a good deal of optimism because I believe it responds to the truth of what God has done with us as human beings.
Well, as our last question then, more than half the congregations here today came from the Roman Catholic Church over the very issues of human rights, and particularly with regard to issues with regard to civil rights. And so the question is, what would lead, or how do you think that the Episcopal Church hierarchy, or what would you say would be some words of comfort for those people who left, came here, and now feel like it may not be a safe place to be?
Well, I think to my mind, there are a couple of different issues here. One is the issue of civil rights as civil rights, just sort of flat out before the courts. And I think that anyone within the sort of the province of the Episcopal Church should feel that comforted by the notion that we have been all kinds of on the record recommending that society grant civil rights to everybody. That there be no lack of civil rights for gay and lesbian people. That those be the absolute civil rights. Now, I personally have, I forget what the year was, but it was 2004, I think. Was so what's the legal term? Amicus curiae, is that what it is? I mean, there's a suit that was being put forward in the state of New York to have the civil rights recognized as so it is. And I was one of the signatories of that, and put that forward. And I'm pleased to see that. I don't really quite understand what New Jersey has done just yet. I've actually asked some lawyers to understand what it is that they did. But it seems to me that there's no question about the recognition of the propriety of civil rights. I think it's not simply my opinion. I think that there are lots of actions by various church bodies. The General Convention, I believe, has passed such a resolution. I know our own diocesan convention has passed such a resolution. I think that what was the other one of the question?
Well, if people are coming from the Roman Catholic Church.
Okay. Well, I think that as I understand I haven't come from the Roman Catholic, so I don't know what the particular impulsion was and what they did. I know only kind of the newspaper level of what the Roman Church has done. Things like saying people can't go to seminary. That's just so far from where we are in the Episcopal Church. just doesn't connect. I mean, we as a policy guy, I've been a seminary dean for 14 years. I'm on the seminary board, and I just there are gay and lesbian people in our seminaries. So that, for example, I think that there's the teaching of the Roman churches that gay and lesbian people are not eligible for heaven. I mean, I think that there's all kinds of evidence in resolution after resolution after resolution that the Episcopal Church has passed that denies that. So, I would say that there's that the whole framework of what we have been doing for 30 years within the Episcopal Church has been recognizing the rights of the place and honoring the rights of the place of gay and lesbian people, not as though they're some other place. I mean, that's who we are. I mean, so that it seems to me, I can't tell what standards need us to feel a level of comfort and safety. That always is an internal perception. But I would certainly say that we have been working through our resolutions for a long time to ascertain the safety, the presence, the participation of gay and lesbian folks.
Is there any final statement you'd like to make?
It's great to be here. And I will tell you, I think I often, because I was been around the diocese, and I came to the diocese 30 years ago. So I've been around quite a long time, and I have actually visited before most of the dioceses, most of the parishes in the diocese, and I was in this area as the archdeacon for 7 years. In addition to 3.5 I spent as a priest in a local parish, I was, for 5 years I was the parish in Gilbert diocese. Then I spent a year working with the parishes in Manhattan, Bronx, and Staten Island. So I've been around a long time, and I've been to almost every parish in the diocese. And I frequently, one of the things I like to do is I like to let people know that I'm not just kind of a tourist in the diocese. This is my place. The great thing I love to do in institutions of new clergy in their places. This is my ministry and yours. So I really feel a connection. So part of what I do is I try to explicitly make that connection. And I will tell you though, this was unique. This is the first time I have ever asked the question, who remembers so-and-so? And nobody. Usually there are a couple of people I remember. But 30 years ago is a long time. But nonetheless, to say that this is the only time I've ever experienced that. So
we have to remember that when I came here in 1994, there were 2 people.
Yes.
Irene Schindler, who's sitting right here. Irene, raise your hand. And she's very old. And Nina Chin, who's not here this morning, who is she left.
She left.
Oh, she left. And she's even older than Irene. Nina just turned 90, so those are the only 2 people. Actually, my first week, Joan King, who's back here, who's a member of St. Andrews, came over to be here, so there'd be some people here that week. So
you have the 2 or 3.
The first week, she and her husband, the first week there were 4 people. The second week there were 2. So I was being very nervous. No. I have to tell you something that Bishop Sisk said to me when I was looking for a job when I left St. John's at Getty Square, and I came to talk to Archdeacon Sisk at that time. He said,
taken off Jesus Colombo right now.
Okay.
Very beautiful tomorrow and a week later.
Well, I'm not
You were admiring it earlier.